Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. First up on the agenda is Pledge Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next up is public forum. This is limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Do I have anyone here for public forum this evening? All right, seeing none, moving on. The third item on our agenda are the minutes from the Board of Selectmen minutes of June 6th, 2017.
I move to accept the meeting minutes as presented on June 6th.
Second.
Hearing a second. All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes 5-0. All right, squeezed in between item number 3 and item number 4, certificates of recognition.
Dave, you have the recognitions. I can't do this justice. Chief, do you want to talk about this incident? This incident happened at Waters Farm during Waters Farm Days last fall. And the chief is probably do it better justice than I would, so.
Sure. Good evening. Thanks for having us again. As Jim stated, it was at a car show at Waters Farm. And I believe it was on a Sunday. It was a rather nice day, and we received multiple 911 calls for a man that had gone down with some unknown medical condition. And as we normally do, cruises and ambulances were dispatched. They arrived on scene. Officer McGee was the first officer to arrive on scene. He observed an unknown male laying down on the ground with somebody performing CPR on that male. Officer Giro arrived a short time later. Both officers utilized an AED, which is an automated external defibrillator, which is an electrical device that you hook up to a patient's chest, and it monitors their heart. If their heart is in a certain rhythm, it provides a shock, and it shocks them back to the correct rhythm. The device only works under 2 conditions. 1, if it's installed properly. 2, if it's installed within a certain amount of time that it can sense electrical impulses. And 3, you need to be a knowledgeable operator to run the device. A number of shocks were given to the patient. He ultimately began breathing again as a result of the efforts of the bystander witness who was also performing CPR, and Officer Giro and Officer McGee. I don't know any other way to say it simply, but they saved the man's life because of their actions. Someone has a husband, somebody has a father still, somebody still has a brother. It's the only way that I can really explain it. Subsequently, we put both officers in for a recognition award through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. They were chosen to receive a life-saving award, which we attended in Waltham on June 8th. They were presented, both officers were presented with a life-saving award for their efforts in saving the man's life. I'm pleased to tell you tonight that we have Officers McGee and Officer Giro here, as well as the patient, who's doing incredibly well, and some of his friends and family here with us tonight.
That's great.
Excellent. Shall I just read them?
Sure.
Great.
So we actually have the certificates of recognition here, so I'll read those. Do you guys want to come up?
You can sit down.
No, it's fine.
So this is a Town of Sutton, Massachusetts Certificate of Recognition in recognition of Town of Sutton Police Officer Mark Giro. It is hereby resolved in formal session that by the Board of Selectmen that this certificate of recognition be awarded to Police Officer Mark Giro for rendering medical assistance to a person in need, and whereas Officer Giro, an officer of the Sutton Police Department, responded to a call at Waters Farm where an individual was experiencing a cardiac episode. Acting quickly and decisively, along with the help of a bystander, Officer Giro, along with Officer McGee, activated an AED and helped save the man's life. And whereas Officer Giro went above and beyond his law enforcement duties, demonstrating his first responder training, now therefore be it further resolved that the Sutton Board of Selectmen, on behalf of all residents of Sutton, commend Officer Giro on his heroic actions and the professionalism and caring brought to this crisis. In witness thereof, the Sutton Board of Selectmen has caused this certificate to be signed this 27th day of June in the year 2017 by the members of the Board of Selectmen. And shall I just read the other one?
Why don't you read that?
It's going to sound similar, but Town of Sutton, Massachusetts Certificate of Recognition in recognition of Town of Sutton Police Officer Michael McGee. It is hereby resolved in formal session by the Board of Selectmen, Sutton Board of Selectmen, that this certificate of recognition be awarded to Police Officer Michael McGee for rendering medical assistance to a person in need. And whereas Officer McGee, an officer of the Sutton Police Department, responded to a call at Waters Farm where an individual was experiencing a cardiac episode. Acting quickly and decisively, along with the help of a bystander, Officer McGee, along with Officer Giro, activated an AED and helped save the man's life. And whereas Officer McGee went above and beyond his law enforcement duties, demonstrating his first responder training, now therefore be it resolved that the Sutton Board of Selectmen, on behalf of all residents of Sutton, commend Officer McGee on his heroic actions and the professionalism and caring brought to this crisis. In witness thereof, the Sutton Board of Selectmen has caused this certificate to be signed this 27th day of June in the year 2017. Congratulations.
Well done. Very well done.
So we can make it official.
Oh, sure, take a picture.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Jesse, you should get in the picture.
All right. Oh.
Take another picture, sure. Great.
If it would be okay with the board, I'm not sure if Al has a few words he wants
No,
to.
I thank these guys immensely. We came up before, and I thank you people for having that defibrillator to really bring me back.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good to be on this side of the grass.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Officer McGee, when I was at the hospital, he had brought another, I don't know who it was, but he brought someone to the hospital that needed something. While my husband was being worked on, he sat with me out in the hallway while they worked on him and kept me relaxed. He talked to me for a good 10 to 15 minutes. So he was very helpful while I was actually at the hospital.
Great.
I didn't know if you knew he was there, but
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
wonderful.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Excellent work. Excellent work. That's a good end. That's a great end.
It's a good story.
Yep. Yeah.
Take care.
Oh, thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda is item number 2, acquisition of the Blackstone Street Bridge easements. Jim?
Jen?
Jen?
Very smooth transition.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you, do my Vanna White. All right, this is the official right-of-way plan for the Blackstone Street Bridge project, which is supposed to advertise in August and start construction maybe before the end of the year, but likely next spring. There are a number of temporary and permanent easements that are required for this project. The darker purple and the darker salmon color are the permanent easements. All the other ones are temporary easements. There are 3 parties involved. The blue easements and the purple easement are actually 2 different entities, but Joe Piparato is the principal in both of those 2 different entities. The salmon is Joan Wood Bedrosian and her family. And we already have a release from the Bedrosians. Jim and I are working with the Piparatos on securing their easements, but we need to continue with the process. We don't need to wait to get that release. We may not get that release. So we need to continue through this process so that we don't jeopardize the project advertising on time. And in fact, the state would potentially like to advertise this early, which rarely happens. Wow. So we don't want to stand in the way of that. I'm also working with John Eichman of KP Law to get him the correct documents he needs to get this all recorded this week. So we have every possible chance of going out to bid early on this project. About a $4 million project. The bridge can be closed for almost up to a year. The alternate route will be Depot Street, which will have some minor improvements before it serves as the alternate. And Matt Stencil and I were notified probably about 2 months ago that the state has actually moved Depot Street up on its replacement list as well. So that will follow shortly behind this one. So you have the takings order that needs to be endorsed by the board, and then that will be recorded along with the taking plan and an affidavit from town council that's necessary. And then we can send all these documents to Mass DOT and they'll be ready to go.
What happens, if I may, Mr. Chairman, what happens if the order of taking, if one of the individuals doesn't sign off on the easements and the town executes this order of taking?
The project will proceed regardless. That individual has 3 years from the date of the order of taking, the date it gets recorded, to basically protest the taking. However, we've done a little bit of extra due diligence on this process. We paid for an appraiser and a backup appraiser, a review appraiser, to come in and appraise these takings. And part of your motion tonight will be to dispense payment, equitable payment for these easements. So we're not relying on anybody donating land to us. We're not doing any of that. We've gone the extra step to get the appraisals to, I shouldn't say the extra step, it's a required step regardless, but we haven't kind of pushed the donation angle. We've certainly let parties know that we'd love a donation if they want to give us a donation. But as long as we have the initial appraisal, the review appraisal, and we pay out that money, which is part of your motion tonight, there's very little risk, so to speak, that even if an individual comes back within that 3 years, that there should be any huge issues, because we've duly appraised this, it's been reviewed. And we're talking about, if you look at the plan well, we're talking about temporary easements that are over air and over water, and permanent easements that involve very little physical land. Again, it's airspace over the river. There is some minor land alteration, and none of it affects current operations for any of these parties. We've met with the parties, for 2 years, probably, to make sure things as simple as barways for cows that occasionally cross out here are maintained during construction and post-construction and the like. So we've been really careful on this project to make sure that the town's in a good position as we move forward.
Excellent, thank you. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really glad to see this project go forward. We mention it quite a bit at Central Mass Regional Planning, and I've been closely watching this with District 3, and they're excited too. This is a historic dam. The roadway goes over there. It's going to help out a lot of the residents when it's done. It's Singing Falls Dam, and the project is at 100% design. And Jen, I want to say for you that what we look at in Central Mass Regional Planning is for the planners in the towns to get all the paperwork, go through the procedures, what you have and everything, because some of them don't. And this is something that's all step by step, and we look at all of this, and you're right on key. You're right above board, and one cut above. So I thank you for that, and this project will go forward. And Depot Street was new a couple of months ago or so. They're going to bring this forward a year so that we'll be able to have that done too. So I think that's a good thing for the town of Sutton to have 2 roadway projects done,
no
and
question.
something we don't have to pay for.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you.
Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep. Yeah, John, you just hit on that last piece, which I thought is certainly worth mentioning, is that this is not being done with local money, so that's a good thing.
And they're 2 town-owned bridges, by the way, so, and the state is taking care of
Yeah.
it, so we appreciate that.
Just a couple of technical questions on the easements themselves, if I could. It looks like you have about 6,000 square feet covered over 3 different parcels for the permanent easements. And I think you touched on this. We're not really doing anything like the language says that we have the right to, deal with property or buildings and things on the property, but we're not actually doing any of that stuff, it sounds like. We may be
Yeah, we're
altering the land
disassembling a
slightly.
stone wall, we're reassembling it, we're doing some grading on the edge of the roadway. You'll find when you come into Blackstone Street now that when you go past J&G Food and the concrete block building that's there, it will be a hair more gradual because the bridge itself is being expanded south into the river. So you're gonna swing the road out just a little bit wider, a little bit more gradual, and pick up that new lane. So you're gonna have 2 very sufficient sized travel lanes, and you're gonna have a sidewalk with railing on the dam side. So you can actually stand on the bridge on the sidewalk and look at Singing Dam, which will be great. And then as you know, the Blackstone River Bikeway is proposed to go along the towpath literally on the other side of this bridge from Tricentennial Park. So that sidewalk connection is really a vital piece of this project. So no, I mean, we're doing some grading. If you look at I forget how many pages now, it's about 57 pages, I think, the construction plans now. If you look at the detailed construction plans, you've got some grading going on in these areas. You've got some drainage swales, deconstruction and reconstruction of fieldstone walls, and just some minor sloping that facilitates a little bit of a widening in some parts of the road. So it's very, very minor.
Right. And the temporary easements are really just to allow the construction to actually happen.
And there will be a massive, massive crane stationed pretty much adjacent to that concrete building for many, many, many months, with a huge boom lifting the girders in place. And so what you see, a lot of this is air easements, staging easements, so they can do the construction project.
Right. So in the short run, meaning the period of time when there's construction, there's the inconvenience of actually the construction, but in the long run, particularly with these permanent easements there's really, little to no impact on the owners.
Very little.
And to Jim's point, the fact that, if it may not get signed, is it akin to like eminent domain, taking the easements,
That's exactly what you're
from
doing.
that?
Yeah, you're basically doing an eminent domain taking.
But nonetheless,
payment.
I guess the point I'm trying to make to the public is we may be doing this, but we're doing this, to ultimately betterment of the area itself, and really no harm to the owners of the parcels. So,
Yes. Making a substantial, much-needed public safety improvement that'll also have some aesthetic and recreational value as we move forward.
yeah, it's a great project. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. Mike?
Sure, thank you. So with payment, is that payment on the final project, the easement of the final project of what land we take, or is that the land that we're using to put the crane and everything also?
The payment is the appraised value of both temporary and permanent
Okay.
easements.
Yeah, so to kind of echo with Selectman Hall had mentioned, to better it with payment, we're getting 2 bridges, or one of them pushed up because of the fact of probably traffic that'll be moving on that damaged bridge. And the town bridge is paid for by the state.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
yeah, it is.
So, thank you.
Mr. Mike, Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple things. I'll piggyback on what John said. It's nice to know that, we hear a lot of static about roadways and they're going through Sutton and work that needs to be done. It's nice to have the state paying for it and 2 good-sized projects that are going to improve our roadways, so it's nice to see. Question on the contractor. Now, if we've seen in other towns and other municipalities where projects begin and the contractor either falls apart, goes bankrupt. What kind of contingencies in place for that?
Unfortunately, none of that is under the town of Sutton's control.
Okay, so it's all under the state?
This is a Mass DOT District 3 project, right? So, I mean, we'll be kept apprised. We'll be in on any meetings, myself and Matt Stencil, as it moves forward. But they will be following public procurement process. And as you know, I mean, there was one bridge in Millbury that was out of service for forever, and it was an issue with the contractor. And some significant change orders that the state finally just said, you know what, enough of these. And they shut that down and had to re-advertise the whole thing. It got done very well in the long run, but it's a long period of time. There's no safeguarding against that other than Mass DOT doing a really conscientious process of reviewing the bids. And but that's the thing with public procurement, it's low bid.
Right.
So it can put you in a tough position. We saw that with the school, and there was no really fault on anybody's part. It just happens that way sometimes. But we'll be engaged. We've been engaged all along, and certainly if there's anything we see in terms of red flags, we'll call them out. But the state's the one making the call on this
Right.
one.
And last question, you mentioned about public safety was, in the forefront of the planning. For the public, just to make everybody, to be certain that we don't have any issues with public safety with police and fire department getting in any of these areas, that's already been planned out? You talked about Depot Road, so there's nothing that could be cut off, during the construction process where anybody could be, I guess, isolated.
Now, that's actually safety alternate route and just standard travel route as part of the Mass DOT, the very beginning initial process here. We have an on-site scoping session in which myself, the highway superintendent, and police and fire are all invited, so we can kind of have our say. The one thing we will be working on as we get the start construction date is coordinating actually with the school system in terms of school buses. That comes kind of at the end when you actually have a date you can hone in on. Other than that, just coordinating the school buses. All of the safety department heads are aware and are just waiting for the time frame, the construction time frame, so they can put up the obviously signage and stuff as part of the regular specs, but so that we can get up notices on public access and on Facebook pages and everywhere that we can think of. And so our departments are well apprised that they have an alternate route now.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Ray. Jen, thank you very much for your hard work on this project. I know, for as long as I can think back, that bridge has been half covered in Jersey barriers because of safety issues. And knowing that we're getting to the point where this project is going to be tackled, especially by the state, it's definitely beneficial, and it's going to be wonderful once it's completed. And as was mentioned, it's not just one bridge in the deal, it's 2. So, of course, thank you for your hard work in this. John, I'd like to thank you for your hard work as well. And if you have a chance, please thank everyone at Central Mass Regional Planning for us. Because obviously the fact that they were able to, take a look at these projects and realize that there's a legitimate need, that's definitely proof positive that they're looking out for us. And we definitely appreciate the effort.
It's really beneficial to have a constant voice up at the regional planning agency.
I know, I think we definitely have a constant voice there.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have an agenda item with this, so I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
You want
Sure. Agenda 2, motion pursuant to the vote taken under Article 6 of the October 17 town meeting to execute an order of taking and to take by eminent domain for public way purposes for the purpose of rehabilitating and reconstructing Blackstone Street and the bridge thereon, permanent and temporary easements for a term of 5 years in or under the parcels of land shown on a plan entitled Plan Showing Easements for Blackstone Street Improvements over Blackstone River, prepared for Town of Sutton, dated December 27, 2016, prepared by Lighthouse Land Survey LLC, and the award damages for the taking in the amount set forth in Exhibit B attached to the order of taking, which Exhibit B is not to be recorded with the order.
Second?
Hearing a motion and a second. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you, Jen.
very much.
John.
Thanks, Jen.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda are our board reappointments and town administrator reappointments. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every year, we reappoint various members to serve on boards and commissions. The Board of Selectmen have a list of appointments, and the town administrator also has a list of appointments. I've included both of them, and the motion will reflect that. The clerk generally reads the appointments.
Thank you. Town officials seeking reappointment by the Board of Selectmen. Position, the Board of Appeals, a 3-year reappointment, Richard Deschaines, term expires 2020. Conservation Commission, 1 3-year reappointment, Joyce Smith, term expires 2020. Council on Aging, 2 3-year reappointments, Rosemarie DiGaetano and Gail Graves, terms expire 2020. Board of Health, 2 3-year reappointments, John Silverberg and Kenneth Mallow Jr., terms expire 2020. Historical Commission, 1 3-year reappointment, Mark Kellogg, expiring 2020. Planning Board, 2 3-year reappointments, Scott Paul and Miriam Sanderson, expiring 2020. Sewer Commission, 1 3-year appointment, Larry Wiersma, expiring 2020. And at this time, we would like to thank those that chose not to be reappointed, Lauren Rothermick from the Conservation Commission and Beverly Graverson from the Council on Aging. Town officials reappointed by the town administrator. Animal Control, 1-year reappointment, Dan Chauvin, term expiring in 2018. Animal Inspector, 1-year reappointment, Ed Mansfield, expiring 2018. Burial Agent, 2 1-year reappointments, Laura Caruso and Cheryl Rowinski, expiring 2018. Constables, 2 1-year reappointments, Dennis Toll and Laura Caruso, expiring 2018. Emergency Management, 3 1-year reappointments, Paul Maynard, Don Conlon and Jeffrey Briggs, expiring 2018. Emergency Planning, 6 1-year reappointments, Cheryl Rowinski, Matt Belcito, Dennis Toll, John Kuchar, Matt Stencil, and Jim Smith, expiring 2018. Fence Viewer, 1-year reappointment, Dave LaValle, expiring 2018. Hazardous Waste Coordinator, 1-year reappointment, Fire Chief Matt Belcito, expiring 2018. Parking Clerk, 1-year reappointment, Laura Caruso, expiring 2018. And a Board of Assessors, 1 3-year reappointment, Robert Nunemacher, expiring 2020.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
John, do you have any comments?
No, I look forward to approving the motion.
Dave?
Same here, and just a general thank you to all the people that give their time and effort to serve the town. You can't run a town without people doing this kind of service, and we certainly appreciate it.
Mike?
I'd like to echo that. Just looking down the list, I just kind of glanced again with the reappointments, for not just this term, but last term and in terms possibly before. For the thanks for volunteering their time and to helping out. Thank you.
Ray?
Thank you. Quick question. Being the new guy, I have never heard of a fence viewer. Maybe someone can tell me what a fence viewer is?
We know he doesn't sit down on the job.
Yeah.
Sitting on the fence.
Dave LaValle has held that position in town for far longer than I've been in office, and I think far longer than all of us have been in the office, except maybe John Hebert. It is typically whenever there's an issue between neighbors with the size and height of a fence. They sometimes call town hall to be an arbitrator. And then we call Dave LaValle and say, go handle this issue. And Dave goes out, he measures the fence. There's a certain height of a fence where it could be deemed a spite fence. So if you put a 10-foot fence, your abutting neighbor could have an issue with that, where it is on the road and so forth. So that's a role that Dave LaValle fills for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
I don't think he's had many calls recently, so, but it is nice to have.
Well, with the new vinyl fences, I'm sure they're probably pretty standard sizes. Yeah, I'd like to, of course, just echo point that made by Dave and Mike. Volunteering is wonderful, and have so many people willing to step forward and give their time to the town. It speaks volumes, because obviously the town cannot function without these positions being filled. So I'd like to thank everyone involved, and again, extend an extra special thank you to Lauren and Beverly for their time, which they were involved as well. All right, so there being no other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve as read the reappointments made by the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator as read.
Second.
Hearing a motion in a second. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. All right, the last item on our agenda, a special education stabilization policy. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall last May town meeting where the Board of Selectmen established a special education stabilization fund. This was a recommendation of Jeffrey Bannon on the Finance Committee. He had looked at some other communities that had this fund in place to deal with uncertainty within the school department. At the beginning of the year, they budget for special education funds, out-of-district placements, and those individuals that need those services. But this is a situation where if something happens in the middle of the year, they didn't have the chance to budget it, and someone moves into the district and requires out-of-placement district and residential district, residential placement, which could cost $150,000 or more, $150,000 or more, and they have no funds to cover that. That sort of unpredictability. So the Special Education Stabilization Fund was set up for that specific purpose, where we could go to town meeting, get a disbursement from the Special Ed Stabilization Fund, and pay for that unique circumstance. The problem that came up when we established this fund was how we were going to replenish this account. We had different thoughts. The school department had one series of thoughts, and the town had another series of thoughts, and we kind of threw it on each other. The town threw it on the school department, well, this is your responsibility, and the school department threw it on the town and saying, we don't have any extra money. So we were looking at all different options, from Medicare billing to circuit breaker funding and other sorts of funding. This solution actually came up ironically where we were meeting with Mass DOR during a meeting with, I think Dave Hall was there, and Jeff Bannon from the Finance Committee were also there. And the thought came up, and I think it was Tim Harrison that mentioned it, and what if we use the stabilization fund to fund some of these? And then it kind of got brushed off, and we didn't go back to it. Later that afternoon, Tim came back to my office and said, I think this is a good idea. So what our plan is, and this policy lays it out, is to use the stabilization fund, general stabilization fund, which is right now at the board goal of 8% of our operating revenue minus debt exclusion debt. So, I know it's complex, but, our operating revenue is, let's say, $31 million. When you take out the debt exclusion debt also, it comes down to like roughly $26 million. The 8% is a little over $2 million. Right now, we have $2,050,000 in the stabilization account. Anything more than $10,000, so the first $10,000 goes into the stabilization fund, keeps up with that 8% goal that the board set a couple years ago. Anything more than that will go into the special education stabilization fund to build that up to the goal of $350,000, and then we will stop funding it. And then obviously, if it's drawn down, we will look to replenish it by the same mechanism. There may be other mechanisms that we employ. New growth, extra new growth that we receive that we don't have a destination for it is another potential funding source for this. But this is a specific plan that doesn't rely on Medicare billing that the school department's responsible for, or circuit breaker, which is also a school department issue. It's a kind of an independent way to replenish the fund where no one's affected, their budgets aren't affected, but it will replenish the fund and good to go. Now, I did speak to Superintendent Friend, and he doesn't look to this as a resource. He doesn't want to touch it. So hopefully we never have to touch it. We build it up to $350,000 and it stays there. It's another insurance policy for the town and the school department. But it's there in case of emergency. But this policy lays that out for you.
Excellent.
Thoughts, questions?
John?
Thank you. Gee, the only thing I want to say about it, I think it's very good, sound management on the financial team that we have here, and it's a fund. We're just going to keep up to that and cap it off at a certain rate, and I think that's the way to go. And I think in the long run, this helps our bond rating, number one, and it helps the auditors that come in here. They look at something like this and they go, wow, here's Sutton again, thinking out of the box. So, thank you.
Thanks, John. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think I'd like to just start with kudos to Jeff Bannon and Tim for working very hard on this over a period really of many months. To echo what John's saying, I think this demonstrates the same kind of thing we talk about over and over again with sound fiscal planning. Over the course of a long period of time, sped costs are the one thing that strike fear in the hearts of school committees, that a single placement can ruin a budget in a given year. So to have a fund in place to sort of mitigate the impact of a large placement is just a really nice luxury to have, really. And so a smart plan with a lot of thought that's gone into how it gets funded and how it gets replenished if that need comes up is a great thing. And so kudos to you guys for dealing with that. I strongly support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Mike?
Smart thinking outside the box to the team, the financial team on that, for coming up with the idea. Question I have is, so when you talk about potential emergencies, is that a placement? Is that what you mean by an emergency where we'd need to dip into the fund that's there, a couple extra placements?
Yeah, this would be anything out of the ordinary, anything that the school department couldn't see when they were putting together their budget. So somebody moves into the district, let's say in September. Their budget's 3 months old, and it's an out-of-district residential placement. That could run you $150,000 to $200,000. There's no funding mechanism other than circuit breaker, but at this point you pretty much have to utilize all the circuit breaker money that's budgeted or funded to the town. There is a 1-year layover and so forth, but it's a pretty restricted funding source. So this provides another funding source in case of that situation happening or some sort of situation happening. And it would require that this policy lays it out, that the superintendent and the town administrator work together to sponsor an article on town meeting that would request a draw from the Special Ed Stabilization Fund for that specific purpose. And we would lay out that individual situation, with privacy rights obviously stipulated, but
Okay,
yeah.
thanks. Thank you.
Sure.
Rick?
I will echo the same, nice work, Tim. It's, having a child with, in the school system with special needs, you always wonder where this money comes from and how the placement, how these things get funded.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that Sutton's ahead of the game and kind of ahead of the curve to make this happen. So I'm all for it. I'm on board. I've seen the result of what this kind of funding can do. So kudos.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Well, I'd like to echo some of the statements as well. I was on the school committee for 5 years, and the former special ed director, Margot Ostian, whenever she would come in, she's a lovely woman. I love her to death, but you'd put chills down your spine because you don't know what's going to happen. Fortunately, more often than not, it was good news. But as was said, if someone of special needs moves into town, it becomes the town's responsibility. So, as was mentioned, it literally could be a budget breaker. So the fact that, this was thought of, again, kudos to Jeff Bannon for coming up with this, Tim, for your involvement, Jim, for your involvement as well. Just having that ability to offset something in the moment, I'm sure everyone on the school committee, Superintendent Friend, are breathing a sigh of relief. So
Yeah.
I don't see how you could do anything else other than support this. Well thought of plan.
Thank you.
Thank you again for everyone who did work on this. But of course, we have a motion, so I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve special education stabilization policy.
Second.
Hearing a motion and second. Any further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Didn't think so. Passes 5-0. All right, next up on our agenda is Town Administrator's Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few updates for the board. First is Green Communities Grant Award. This last Monday, Chairman Jesse Lemanik and Energy Manager Doreen DeFazio attended a press conference at the State House. I was on vacation. I wasn't able to attend. We received a grant of $204,888. We applied for replacement of the boilers at the Early Learning Center. We are currently working on that bid package. And we received funding for $151,000 for that, which is a huge positive that we did get that. So we will be able to replace those boilers outright. And that extra $100,000 that's in the capital plan, we will look to use that for the 2 boilers in the elementary school, which are nearing end of life. And rather than going out to bid as one with 4 boilers, it's too big of a project. We're going to do 2 and 2. And hopefully that's enough money to do both of those projects, which is a huge benefit for the school department. And we'll give another 20 years of life to both of those buildings and those boilers. We also applied for 2 electric vehicles, Chevy Bolts, with a range of 240 miles on average. But you can get more than that, as we heard from Colin McCullough, who's a great energy advocate here in the town of Sutton, who just bought a Chevy Bolt. So he's driving one around. If you see a black car driving very slowly down the road, don't call the cops. It's probably Colin. Yeah, he's very passionate, and we love him for that. So we did get funding for 2 electric cars and charging stations. It's a dual charging station, so we'll be able to charge 2 vehicles with that, and that'll be located at the back of Town Hall, adjacent to the Rufus Putnam Museum. And in addition, we applied for DEP EVIP program. We received funding for that. To date, the town has received almost $640,000 in green communities energy grants. That's a great tribute to the green energy program and the founders of this, Mark Sylvia and Governor Patrick and so forth. Jen Hager, Doreen, obviously, who pretty much came up with this, the electric car idea, and she had worked with Millbury in the past on this, got a similar grant for them, and was, understood the DEP EVIP program, which I have trouble even pronouncing that term, but she's just terrific, and she did all that work, and it was a great victory for the town. So we look forward to getting that grant finished, hopefully this fall. The boiler should be in. We're ready to go out to bid. I've got the plans and specs in process, which means that if all the projects are completed by end of December, then we can apply for another grant next March. So we're on this annual grant process, and a lot of that is we're able to do that because of the energy manager. Jen Hager and I do not have the time to do all of this, or pretty much any of this. Our schedules are, you just saw Jen. She's here on vacation, and she came to a meeting and took time out to present. But Doreen provides a lot of support and pretty much runs the Green Communities effort in town, and so I'd like to thank her for that. Goddard Lodge rehabilitation, we will be advertising tomorrow in the Central Register. Filed sub-bids are due July 17th. GC bids are due July 26th. If everything's in order, we will execute a contract, hopefully begin construction in the middle of August. And it's a relatively small project, but an important one for not only Marion's Camp, but the Campfire Girls and anybody that will utilize that facility in the going forward. Sidewalks at the Early Learning Center, hopefully will go out to bid shortly. We're working with Andrews Engineering, who's doing the specs, plans and specs for those sidewalks. A number of different entrances. We're still a work in progress. Matt Stencil's on vacation this week. I'll meet with him next week and review where we're at. Town Farm Road Cell Tower finally broke ground Monday, June 19th. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen and the residents for their patience. This was a long time in the making, as we all know. And obviously, I'd like to thank this board and all the board's support over the years. I couldn't have done that. We couldn't have accomplished this. The town couldn't have accomplished it without that support, because every year I needed to come before this board and get a one-year renewal that allowed to extend the due diligence period for an additional year. And I think I did that for 4, 5, 6 straight years. But I'd also like to thank the Whittier family. They deserve the most support. They went through some tough times in 2008 and with the listeria scare, the town supported the APR purchasing 182 acres from the Whittiers, and they were very supportive in that. And then we had discussions with Wayne Whittier about purchasing this land for a cell tower. And, without his support, and they are great supporters of this town. And I just want to thank them for all their support. Third grade visit to Town Hall. Sutton third graders came by Town Hall for their annual visit. Jen Hager did a great job leading the tour. They also visited the police station and the blacksmith shop. The Green Line Velo race was held Sunday, June 11th. The event went off without any issues that the town is aware of. I'd like to thank the residents and support for the patience for this one-day event. Obviously, this board feels it's important for the board for the town to sponsor these types of events, but I didn't hear any issues. If anybody has any issues, you can talk to me after and let me know. And just a reminder, the goals meeting will be held on August 8th at 6 p.m. at the Blackstone National Golf Course. And as typical, we will order off the menu that night.
Excellent.
That's all I have for updates, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Jim. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of very good things in your update tonight, Jim. First is the Green Communities Grant. Doreen, we know what you did with the street lighting, and now what you've done here and the energy that you have and the commitment to the town of Sutton. It shows with everything that you do. So I thank you personally, and I think all my colleagues would agree with that. Goddard Lodge, you know, that's a pet project of mine, and I know the bids are going to be open this week, I think tomorrow, and I'm excited. John Kuchar has done a lot of work down there, and to facilitate everything, and that's going to be a good project. A lot of people are going to be looking forward to that. I would like to talk about the cell tower, and not because of my positions in town and not because I was a police chief, but I can remember prior to the 9 years, Sprint come into Sutton, and we did balloon testing, and we wanted to put a cell tower behind the police station now, and the height requirement was 150 feet. Well, we had opposition from Historical Society and Whitby. That's okay, but it was a big learning experience for us, and it broadened up the scope of where and what we could do with elevations and everything else. And from Mike and Kenny Smith and anyone, Kenny Stewart, anyone that goes up and down Central Turnpike and everything, and you're in a business conversation or a friendly conversation and you lose that conversation, it's so darn disgusting. And not myself, I'm not here to speak about myself, I'm here to speak about a group. But I had a lot of concern about public safety because I was the police chief at that time, and I still have that concern. So this is going to be one of the things. But back then, there was a vision, and it was a group vision. But I can't help to mention the work that when we were on the board from Mike Chizzy, Ken Stewart, Rick Hersom, Kevin Garrity, and
Ryan Fatman as well.
Ryan Fatman also, and then myself, and not to include me, but I was there. And for all the work that everyone's done, and the continued work that's been done from there. And as Jim said, the Whittier family, to come up with, now we have a roadway to get up there, and we purchased the land, and the site has been all set now to go. And the commitment from either Verizon and Wireless Edge to be there, that's exciting news for us. And I think it's one of the things, us as selectmen, everybody as a collective group here, that's all we hear from people. Well, when are we going to get a cell tower for this area? Well, it's not only for this area, for the Central Pike area. I think that'll branch out to the West Sutton Road area, down by the school. The schools are terrible for cell phones, and who knows how far that'll branch out. And then when we get the other tower up on Pigeon Hill for public safety things, it's going to be one of those things that public safety, we won't have to worry about an officer calling in on a public radio and having help, which did happen down in Purgatory, and when an officer was down on the ground. So that brings bone-chilling things through your head, and we've been lucky in that way in town. So with all the updates, Jim, again, I thank you, and I think we're ahead of the curve on so many things. I did have one question on the boilers.
Yeah.
When would those things be installed?
Well, our goal is to install them in the summer period,
Okay.
where the kids aren't in session.
Cool.
I mean, I think we do have the ability to install them when school is open, coming in the back door, going through the boiler section. There is an entrance there. But I'd rather not query check and do all the difficult stuff with all the contractors. So ideally, we will get it out to bid in July, and the beginning of August, we will start construction.
Okay, thank you. I probably went over, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said, John, well said, thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I was going to say, it was tough to follow that. There was however, I'm going to follow it. And I also want to thank Doreen. Doreen, you've been kind of a regular visitor to our meetings lately, but as someone else said, every time you show up, we save money. So I think that's you're welcome back anytime. But I wanted to talk about $640,000. $640,000 is, it's a big number to begin with, but when you realize that all of this money that we received went into projects that then helped the town save money on top of the money that was spent,
Right.
is really just a phenomenal thing that has happened. So, I think that for me just can't be left unmentioned. That's really great stuff that's happened. So, a lot of folks have been mentioned, but I can't help but mention Mr. Chizzy again with all the efforts that he took to get us where we are today. So,
Very true.
Marion's Camp, I can't say that better than John did. So that is his project, and can't wait to see that come to fruition. Quickly on the sidewalks, you may have mentioned this, but when do you think that work's going to happen?
To be honest, I don't know. I did have a conversation with Superintendent Friend, and, it's a relatively small job. We appropriated $30,000 for it. I'm just concerned, Matt Stencil met out on the site with Andrews Engineering and went through the whole layout. There is some handicap ramps that need to be included. Those are expensive to do them right, and we want to do them right. They're writing up, Andrews Engineering is writing up specific specs for 4 different areas: the entrance into the Early Learning Center, the entrance entrance in the that leads to the courtyard in the elementary school, the entrance into the elementary school, and then the side part that goes beyond the elementary school and goes along the side of the building to connect with the connector way between the middle school, the elementary school, and the middle school. So there's 4 different projects now that we've made this out of, because I don't think we would meet the $30,000 budget. So we're just trying to figure out what we can afford this year. And if we can't get it done by August 20th, then we'll probably put it off until next spring.
That was the
summer.
question I had, if you're really trying to get this in before school gets
Yeah,
started.
that's the challenge with school projects. Ultimately, we get funding at Maytown meeting, really can't begin until July 1, and then you're up against you have 45 days or 30 days in order to advertise in the Central Register, go out to bid, advertise locally. That's a long process. So hopefully we get it done this summer. If not, it'll definitely be done next summer.
Okay. Briefly on the cell tower, it's been pretty well hashed out, but, 2 things. Just coincidentally, I was speaking to somebody over on that side of town today, and by cell phone, and it was hard to talk, and, so just knowing that this project is where it is exciting. But Jim, I think I didn't want to leave you unmentioned in the list of people that have worked really hard on this. I recall, I think the first year that I was on the board, and the concept of the renewal came up, and there was really some hard discussion about whether we wanted to renew that contract and stick with, with the guys that have been involved for so long, because there was nothing happening, and there really was some serious thought about whether it made sense to move on. But you were urging patience, and it turned out to be really the right thing to do. And I think in retrospect, the lack of action really had very little to do with the
location.
It was the market and everything else that was going on that was sort of out of the hands of really everybody that was involved. We were waiting for all those players to get back involved and come to the table to want to do these kind of projects. So it's worked out, and it worked out for all the right reasons that you mentioned. So I can't help but mention Jen with the 3rd graders, recalling Arbor Day and how fun that was with I think those were 3rd graders.
Yeah,
if I
3rd
remember
graders,
right.
yeah.
And 3rd graders get to do all the good stuff. But Jen has such a great time doing those things, and I think it's a lot of fun for everybody that's involved. So good for her, good for them. And just lastly, I'm happy to hear good results for the race. I think it has been something this board has supported for a long time. Personally, those are the kinds of events, I think, that are really good for the town, and yet there is some inconvenience to residents that are there. So for everybody to work together and hopefully have a good result is encouraging. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Dave. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you, Doreen, for very much. It's that's adding to this question too with the port. Is it a port that they're putting in front of electric cars? Is that what they're going to have? Or
Charging
yeah, it's a
stations.
charging station. Will that be accessible to public people that have cars, electric cars in town?
It will be. It needs to be. It's a requirement of
That's
the
what I was
grant.
thinking. Thanks, Doreen.
Sure. We actually have two charging stations, so they're both double charging stations, and they have to be, part of the grant requirement is they have to be made public.
Okay.
So one of them will be at Town Hall here, and then we haven't decided where the second one will go yet. But what's great about these public charging stations too is it's another thing, like the race, that puts Sutton on the map,
Yeah.
right? Because we have public charging stations, people who are coming up and down 146, maybe commuting from Worcester to Providence or back. They have apps that'll tell them if they have electric vehicles, and there's not many yet in this area.
No.
And so Sutton will be one of the first.
It's
So
pretty
that's
wild
exciting.
too. I've watched
Yeah.
a car hook up in my travels for work, and it's I stuck around to wait for the guy to
Yeah.
come back out to hook up because it was kind of like it's like filling your
How
tank.
long does
but
it take?
I don't know. It didn't stick around the whole time, but it was. I don't think they take that long.
Yeah,
do they?
they are fast chargers.
Yeah, I think
That's maybe an hour
Yeah.
to fully charge a car. And you can, grab a bite to eat and just come back, go to the center store, grab a bite, and then your car is fully charged. And that's a pretty good advantage. They do have plug-in, just a regular 110 outlet that it's about 25 miles per hour of recharge. So you have to charge it for a long time to, according to Colin, it's 40 hours to recharge a car. So
to get
that fast charge is a much quicker process.
Now, will there be a cost associated with this per charge? Is that would be like
Not
not
to
for the
the town.
so there won't be an ATM or a
No.
credit card
It's a
operation?
good idea, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're allowed to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's a good revenue generator. But, no, it's a public service, and we're just trying to expand the availability of these chargers so that hopefully people feel comfortable getting electric cars. You have a couple in Millbury, you'll have a couple here in Sutton, and you'll probably have a couple in Auburn, and there are more possible locations to get your car charged.
okay.
So,
Excellent. Hey, have they ever thought of windmills? Is there any type of grants or credits for windmills in town? I don't know. I just saw a show on reusable energy.
we did. We actually looked at
Burlington,
windmills
Vermont
back.
is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, well,
100%.
Burlington is a unique location, and so are the coastal areas.
Yeah.
You drive down to the Cape, on 25, you see a ton of
Yeah.
turbines.
Yeah.
That was actually Mike Chizzy's, I miss him, but Mike Chizzy's idea of, why don't we do a wind study in the town? And we did a preliminary wind study with a consultant, I can't recall, it was probably, 8-9 years ago. And we didn't find that there was any location that had a great place to put a wind turbine. The one possible location was up at Whittier's Farm.
On top of the cell tower.
Well, but ultimately, we only had 5 acres to dealt with, and we felt that the cell tower was the first priority. But we did consider putting a turbine up at that location, similar requirements of setbacks and so forth as allowed under the zoning bylaw. But we did do a study. And we looked at Shaw Farm, we looked at other sites that might have it, and it just wasn't enough. And there are actually regional maps that are produced by, I think, the USGS that show the availability of wind power, the typical speeds of wind within a certain area. So we did look into that. It was an idea. I didn't see it as feasible over the long run, but.
I was watching the show, and it was just showing different ways, and I thought of Doreen and the cost of them going way down, and the farms going up, the turbine farms going up, but I wasn't sure if it was.
Right. Well, to add to what Jim said, so Green Communities would not fund, we have certain criteria that we have to meet, and wind is not one of them. So it's not something we could apply through Green Communities. But, after we're at about 35%, as you know, we're hoping to get through this grant, by December and be in a position to apply again in March for another grant. And I'm thinking about all the projects we've done and, the LED lights and net metering and, even things that we haven't done through Green Communities and now the electric cars. These are all wish list items that we're checking off, right? And so now it's what's next?
Yeah.
What's next for Sutton? And that's exciting too, to be able to come up with maybe ideas like this again and revisit them. And I can do some more research and, have conversations with Jim and see where we left off. Because right now, we're in a good position, and we're replacing boilers, we're, fixing, municipalities with insulation and everything, and we're now looking at, okay, what's next for Sutton? So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, we almost have to push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's exciting.
That was my. I mean, I think most of the other ones were covered on the list. It's great. I was again. You brought it up, Jim, but a big thanks to the Whittier family. When I stopped up there,
Yeah.
for the tower, they've been. The gentleman that's the foreman up there was saying that they've been great.
They are.
They needed a truck. He rented them a truck.
Yeah.
He couldn't get his equipment down. He helped them out. The amount that he's letting them use to do the construction, he's been up there really helping them out. He
Yeah.
says, this guy Wayne is a great guy. He's been nothing but a help to me.
A
So
lot of time on his hands these days with the
with his
solar.
arm.
Yeah, he is just terrific, and he was great negotiating with John Arthur, the president of Wireless Edge, as you know, and Wayne was very, okay, can we move the road over this way? And can we put the fence, what do you think about putting the fence up here? And it was the easiest negotiation I've ever participated in, because they were both very willing to work with each other, and it's terrific that we have that kind of personality in town.
Excellent.
Yeah.
With the race, it's fantastic to see that there wasn't any major problems yet that we know of, and hopefully they bring in a lot for the food pantry.
Right.
And the triathlon was
That's right.
the other week.
Yeah.
wasn't
It was
sure.
June 16th, I
Yeah.
think. I didn't talk to Alex, and I know that the event was sold out, which was the first time that was the case, so we should get a pretty nice check to the food pantry.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked to him about that, but I'll talk to him prior to the next meeting and give you an update on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Rick?
Being one of the last guys, I feel like I'm going to be Mr. Redundancy. Great job on the Green Communities efforts. I'm going to piggyback what Dave mentioned earlier with the $640,000 and what that yields. And it goes well beyond the $640,000. That's amazing what
Very true.
we've been able to achieve with that. Question on the charging station. We have those in my current employer, we have stations. Is there a lot of work that's going to have to go into setting that up, and is that all covered under the grant, or whoever sets up the charging station? Is there some sort of generator, or it just ties into the grid?
It ties into the town's electricity. But Doreen, you can take this question.
So, for what I know, there's a product called ChargePoint, and that's what we used in Millbury, and the setup was done internally for the town. There may be a little bit of trench work that needs to be done. We've already alerted
Matt Stencil,
and told him that. So, but nothing major that we can see at this point. So, we received the award last week. I'm just starting to kind of go through the paperwork, and but from our work implementing in Millbury, it was pretty straightforward.
Good, thank you.
So I'm hoping for the same.
Beautiful. Again, great efforts, and I look forward to see what happens next. It's nice to see the charging stations and things that do bring people into town.
Mm-hmm.
So you've worked some magic. I look forward to see what happens next with the entire group.
Yeah.
As far as the cell tower, I am so excited to have that being on Douglas Road. it's life-saving, and it's great that, with all the efforts of the boards prior to this board and all the folks involved, it's nice to see it finally coming to fruition and ground broken and roads going in. It's great to see. I am sure there are a lot of happy people to see this happen. I'm one of them. I'll raise my hand. And that's all I have. I yield the rest of my time.
Excellent, thank you,
Could
Ray.
I add to one of the comments that Selectman Hall and
Sure.
Plant it brought out, the money that was raised, it kind of makes me think also, that's not, the state gave that money and then it's generating savings along the way.
It is.
It seems like that would be a tough sell to town to say, okay, we're going to try this new way of saving money if we weren't to have a grant to be able to create that opportunity to save the money. So not only is it saving you follow me on that? It's saving a lot of money, but it's not like we're getting a tangible object where we're saying to the taxpayers, here, this is what we're going to get. We're getting things that is new, green community, where other communities aren't doing. Mm-hmm. But yet we're still saving so much from it, where it might have been even harder to get to create that money through tax dollars than it would have been through grants. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and it was really a vision of Mike Chizzy's, is that back in 2008, even as far back as that, he wanted us to become an Energy Star community. Mm-hmm. Back in the early days, to reduce our energy consumption by 10%. And it was kind of a precursor to green communities, because I don't even think green communities were around at that point in time. And we took out some vending machines. There was one right outside of the Board of Selectmen's office. Sorry about that, but it's healthier that way. So, but ultimately, we actually had an employee came in one morning, and the employee who used to work down in the town clerk's office was up on a chair, removing some of the light bulbs. So the hallway was now darker, but that was her idea of saving electricity. It was well before LED lights, et cetera, but it was just the kind of culture that the town adopted with the leadership of Mike Chizzy, and so yeah, it's a good story.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. All right, well, hey, as he said, whenever you come before us, we're saving money. This was a fun day. One thing that I'd like to share with the community is we attended a presentation that was presided over by the Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, and one thing stuck with me in particular was the map of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There are 351 municipalities in this state, and only about 132, see, my number was even a little higher, have obtained this status. And of those, only 72 communities received grants. So we are definitely ahead of the game. I think we're one of the few communities in central Massachusetts.
6, right?
Yeah. That are taking advantage of these opportunities. And again, this is money that is being used to purchase things that we would have to otherwise purchase. You can't run a school building without a boiler system. We would have to go and take it out of the capital stabilization fund. And instead of doing one school, because of this, we're able to offset the expense, and now we're doing 2 schools, which is, as you mentioned so poignantly, the fact that we're going to get longer life out of those buildings. Vehicles, we have to, as a community, have to purchase vehicles. Well, we're using this money to offset that. Yeah. So these are things that we would otherwise have to purchase. We don't have a choice but to purchase these things. So, I mean, yeah, the charging station, that's an added value, but, a boiler, insulation, lighting, and the fact that we have this fund available for our use. I mean, it's kudos to Mike Chizzy for being a visionary, and of course, kudos to everyone who has kept that vision alive. Yeah. Because again, you can't not coming home with that nice little placard that said $204,000 on the train. That was awesome. Goddard Lodge, I think the timing will be good because obviously by the end of August, when hopefully there's a contractor on site, the swimming will be starting to taper down, so it won't impact the community's use with that. Sidewalks are a good thing. Cell tower, I don't think we need to say anything else about that. Green Line Velo Race, Yeah, that was awesome too. I'm glad to hear that there weren't any issues. You know, I had a feeling that there wasn't going to be any because of the fact that there was this openness with the community. We had a good conversation at the time. We had residents come forward, you know, they offered their concerns, and you could see that effort to at least achieve a compromise.
Yeah.
So the fact that this event went off without a hitch, you know, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that was really part of how things turned around, you know, because there were some disgruntled residents out there, but to give them the opportunity to participate in the discussion, I think was a great move.
Yeah, come in, say your piece, and it gave them a chance to have a dialogue off camera as well.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully, all the residents, you know, will be pleased with the outcome. And, I don't think I have anything else on the update, so we might as well move forward with,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the charging stations, and I think this has been brought up as a group, and Jim, you've had some input into it. I'd just like to say something maybe for the community, that if we do have an extra charge station, I think it would be nice if we could reach out to Galaxy and maybe put this down at Galaxy, somewhere there, because I think it's a two-edged sword. We're helping the residents, we're helping their customers. They could advertise, we not only have beautiful shopping here, but we have a charging station. And
Well, that is an outstanding idea. It's actually one that Colin McCullough mentioned. So great minds think alike. The only issue is we can't install a public station, charging station at a private development. However, we will work with Galaxy to install a charging station. We haven't contacted them yet. You know, I don't know that this will be covered in the media, but obviously if this is published in the Millbury Sutton Chronicle, we will reach out to them. We've been talking about this. It was actually a conversation that Colin mentioned to us. It would be nice if we had a charging station other than at Town Hall, where, you know, typically 2 town vehicles would be parked at those charging stations for most of the day, so it's not available to the public. But we think it's a great economic development opportunity to put some of those charging stations, and I think it would be a great benefit to Galaxy that they would be able to advertise that we have public charging stations. Come on in, come to Starbucks, have a cappuccino, and charge your vehicle.
Do your grocery shopping.
Get your grocery shopping done.
have some dinner, and go home. Yeah, it's good
That's a
for
great idea.
business. It again puts Sutton on the map. It's a great idea. Thank you.
I thought I did that.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say
Sure.
one thing before? I just want to say to the board that it was a real pleasure last week to attend the State House and accept the award with Jesse for the town of Sutton. And, you know, I think it's great to get kudos from the board and from Jim, but we all know that, you know, none of this stuff is done in a vacuum, and that, you know, I'm just expediting. I just walked into a community a few years ago that was already enthusiastic about energy efficiency, and, you know, I work under a great manager and a great staff overall, and a very supportive board. So, you know, congratulations to Sutton for getting this award. I'm proud to be part of it. So thank you.
I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
Well said.
All right, why don't we combine announcements, roundtable, and correspondence all into one? John?
I have none.
Okay, Dave?
All right, then, I have none.
All right then, Mike?
I have one. It's tough because it's a positive thing, the cell tower, but I got a couple. There's one resident wanted to know about, a few residents wanted to know about the sidewalk going from the school to Shaw's. And I'd mentioned that there's a committee together for that. Do we know anything if
There's
they're
no
putting-
committee.
I thought someone had to approve the funds. I'm sorry, the fund, I misspoke on that end.
Oh, okay.
The funds were approved that were left over from the school.
Yep.
To go towards that.
Yep.
Any clue on
Timing? Nah, you know.
any direction on it?
We've hired Andrews Engineering to do the layout.
Okay.
Now, to be honest, I've had to take Andrews off of that project because there are bigger priorities.
Yeah.
The police station for one, the communications tower up at Pigeon Hill, the layout of the 1 acre of land that we're purchasing from George Kowzik is another major priority, and we need to get that land purchased prior to putting up a communications tower, and it all, depends upon the police station moving forward as well. So that is our number one priority. So I made a conscious decision to take them off of that, and they already laid it out. They flagged the site, and they've done preliminary work. But I took them out purposely to focus on the communications tower, Pigeon Hill, to focus on the police station project before they focused on the police station. They have limited resources. I did hire Andrews to do all this work. I probably should have looked for other consulting firms, engineering firms, but I've had such good success with Andrews Engineering. I hate, knock on wood, I hate to kind of go in a different direction to an engineering company that I'm not really comfortable with.
Right.
So
Good, thank
that's the reason. And ultimately, that will be a great benefit to put that sidewalk down. And that was like almost $300,000 left over from the school building project that was directed to the sidewalk going down to Shaw. So that's a great win for the town.
Excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you for answering that.
Sure.
The other one was the paving projects for the roads that it might be a bad week with Matt being gone.
Yeah.
Any update on when they're going to start with?
I don't have any update
Okay.
right now. I mean, I can get one.
Yeah, it was just a couple questions that came across.
Yeah, it's probably I think it's gonna happen in the first half of the summer, probably July timeframe.
Excellent.
And then any additional funds will be for work in the second part of summer, late summer, early fall season. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
With the cell tower, there was several emails, private messages. It was an embarrassing time for a little bit as being a selectman at that time, which was sad because it's such a good thing. People felt that they were being bullied for comments they made and people they were thanking because they weren't thanking the right people on Facebook, on social media. So I think as a board, we really need to watch out what we say on social media and how we approach and maybe people's feelings, because you have to remember, perception is pretty much their belief. And if they perceive something to be true, to try to combat that on Facebook might not be, or a social media might not be the best place. Because these are the residents, these are the taxpayers. And there's no reason for people to, I've got from, people are thanking me. Because as John said, there's a lot of people, Dave said, there's a lot of people down there that, in Ray, there's a lot of people that don't have reception down there, my neighbors. So they ask me what's going on over and over and over again. And I say, it's coming, it'll be here, don't worry, it's coming, it's a process, it's this, it's that. So who they know and who their connection is me. So when they thank me and then they get pretty much shot down that they're completely wrong and they know nothing about it, it's bullying to them. And we teach our 10-year-olds not to bully. And this is, where they feel like that, and it's not they, like I'm talking to someone that's not part of this town. These are the people I represent. These are the people that voted me in. These are the people that pay the taxes. I love you guys as a board, but there's 5 or 6 voters here? The rest of the town is what matters to me. So when people come to me and start saying social media is a negative thing, and people outside town are reaching out to me that are a part of that group and start saying to me, what's going on with your board? I think it affects things that we're moving forward. I think it affects people to say, what's going on with your board? What's happening? Are you guys, is there issues? What's happening? It's like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And it's really like there's no other answer I can give to someone to say, hey, I'm sorry, I guess looks like we don't get along. And when I first came in, and till today even, or until last week when I felt that feeling, was, Selectman Hebert had mentioned it to me at the beginning when you and I sat down and talked by your pool. You said, we got a good board, we work things out, we hash things out, and we move forward. And I think that that's the way we've always been. So people's view and their perception of what we're doing, I hope, and again, as a board member, I apologize if I had any part as a board, as a select men, not select man, a group of people that make decisions here, a group of people that have come together. I have one thing to say is that I just really feel that our social media sometimes can get out of control and can be misleading to people. and really make them feel like they're degraded or bullied into believing what they believe and what they want to say isn't the right thing to say. And I don't want people to hold back on saying it because we want to be transparent. We want to be able to help people. A week earlier I made a comment saying if anybody has questions, the two that I asked tonight, please, if you can't make the meeting, private message me. You can be anonymous. I'll shoot it out there, see if we can get an answer. There's 5 selectmen, there's a town administrator, and there's usually someone else here that might be able to get the answer. So shoot it out to me. And that really went against what we were trying to do. So from there on out, it was more of what's going on with the board. So I said my piece. I'm not here to try to stir things up with the board. I'm not trying to say this to do that. I'm just saying that maybe if we lay off some of the answers on social media that might be perceived a different direction, it might help. That's all. Thank you.
Ray?
It's all right.
I'll just piggyback that. We all get caught up in social media. We all get caught up in that tide, and whether it's a Board of Selectmen comment or it's about national media or the federal government, our president, we all get caught up in the emotion. I don't think, I can't defend anybody here, and I won't defend anybody here. It's not my place. But I heard what you said, and I think it was good to be said, and it was aired out. But I think we're all professionals here, and maybe emotions got the best of the folks that are involved. But that said, we all have to be responsible for what we say in the public, especially if we're representing the town of Sutton or anything, whether it's our work or anything else. That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
So,
I do have one update. I heard from Diane, and the food pantry is in a little bit of need as we are getting close to we are in the summer months. But fortunately, the list is relatively short, so I'd like to read through those if I may. They are looking for women's deodorant, hand soap, dish detergent, sugar, hamburger helper, syrup, juice boxes, and instant potatoes.
yeah, and keep in mind we're going into the summer months, and there's no more school and everything else, and peanut butter and jelly and the luncheon foods are helpful just because, it's another meal that they have to feed.
And low sugar options as well. I know that's something that Michelle in particular always asks for.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be a good thing.
And people can drop this off at any time?
At any time when the senior center's open.
Yeah.
Generally, I think till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, one other thing, I would also like to thank Waters Farm. This past weekend, they did a fundraiser for Raising the Barn. They did a ham and beans dinner, and it was pretty well attended, and they were raising money to help offset the construction of the new barn. So I'd like to thank them. It was a good feed, and it was definitely good, well attended. All right, seeing nothing else, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.